morning, everyone. Thank you, Rahul, and uh, I'm happy to be here with all the eminent panelists here. Renewables, as Rahul said, is already sort of mainstreamed, and it's getting into the system more and more, not only in India but internationally. We are behind some other countries in terms of percentage penetration, of which we have about 8% in energy terms and about 20% in installed capacity terms. There are, as you get, we've not experienced the real ill effects of the intermittency of renewables at present in India, because it's the extent of penetration is about 8%. But since we have a system, a federal system where we have states and center, some of these states have much more, and Tamil Nadu has almost 30% penetration. So they have experienced what it is. I mean, what the whole of India would experience if you distribute the effects of intermittency in the whole country. And they have experienced problems, and so has the other renewable rich states like Rajasthan and Gujarat, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. There are about 8 states where renewable energy is concentrated, and these states did bring it to the notice as long back as in 2010 that they were suffering problems, and they needed something needed to be done. So the CRC appointed a committee. I was Chief of Engineering in CRC at that time, and we called all the stakeholders, including the manufacturers of solar panels, the people who are in the wind side, the developers, the think tanks, and government agencies involved in wind and solar, as well as system operators and the concerned states, of course, who had expressed problems. And we thought that actually at that time there was no scheduling of renewables, so all the brunt of this intermittency was going on the system operator, who had to manage the grid on how to manage with this intermittency for these states. So there was a mechanism which was put in place which was called the Renewable Regulatory Fund, where it was said that the responsibility of or the ill effects of intermittency would be shared by the developer to some extent and by the states on the other hand. And since it was something which affected the grid at large, it was not confined to as a state issue. It was confined to the as an interstate matter, and therefore the grid code, Indian Electricity Grid Code, contained provisions of forecasting and scheduling, and also sort of penalties or gains if you forecast well. Penalties for not forecasting to a certain accuracy limit, and then, well, this was a start, and the generators who had never experienced this thing of penalties of scheduling and forecasting, and scheduling, they went to court saying that they are going to be adversely affected commercially to the extent of almost 15% of their revenues. But CRC still went ahead with it. When this mechanism was operationalized after a delay of a few months, they actually found that out of 9 pooling stations, 7 they had actually made money, not lost money. So it turned the argument on its head. But still they had, the court case was on, and because of the jurisdiction issue, it was admitted. Later, of course, I think they withdrew the case because it was decided at the policy level that we need to have these renewables come in the system, and if you needed it in a big scale, then they had to they had to be subject to this mechanism. Well, that's the start of that, and then of course, since we've come a long way, because that time the price of renewables was of solar was around 17 rupees per unit, and that was a cost plus tariff. Later it has now come down to between 2 and 3 rupees per unit, so it's very competitive. So now there is no real cause for, I mean, there's not so much cause for promoting it. It's people are more willing to buy power from here than from coal-based stations, which is the levelized tariff of which is almost 4 rupees per unit. But there are financial implications because of the intermittency, which CEA calculated on account of 6 factors. One was the underutilization of generation capacity of thermal. So with the lower plant load factor, the fixed charge per unit became higher. The inefficient functioning of these thermal plants because they had to back down and plants when there was more of wind and solar power available in the grid. So the efficiency of these thermal plants suffered. Then there was underutilization of the transmission system because it's intermittent as you know. Then there were also financial impact on due to the deviation settlement mechanism, which is deviation from the schedule. And then you had to keep standby capacity. There was a charge for that. So there was a number of charges, the total of which came to around 1 rupee per unit. It was more if you considered the legacy contracts where the earlier cost plus tariff of wind, which was the major part at that time, was around 4 rupees. And so they had to back down the contracted capacity, the variable charge of which was just around 2 rupees. So you lost 2 rupees per unit. But that was legacy contracts. Going forward, about if people wanted to procure capacity, if you wanted to compare that, then this 50 paisa was not there. 2 rupees, we found that this substituted, I mean, this is only happening 25% of the time, so we took 50 paisa as the financial implication on that account. And so that if you compare the total of renewable between 2 and 3 rupees and you add 1 rupee to that, it's still less than 4 rupees. So it still makes economic sense if you count that. Now, of course, you are having different types of storage technologies, which is batteries are becoming more and more economical, although it's presently a higher price. But we did a calculation for Andaman Nicobar Islands where for 4 hours of storage, batteries, lithium-ion batteries would add around 2 rupees per unit. But then you'll have to consider many other things. Since solar is there only for 10 hours, you need storage much more than that if you wanted to do it through battery. But then there's other storage, new innovative storage devices which are coming, which have been claimed to be less than the cheapest sort of balancing source. One of which is Energy Vault, a company in Switzerland, I think, or Sweden, one of these countries who claim that this will be the cheapest balancing source, where you in a pump storage plant you raise water when you've got excess electricity and let the water do the work when you need energy. Whereas this, instead of water you raise bricks, and then when you lower the bricks, the energy gets converted to electricity. And of course, you have some other one about liquefied air energy storage, a pilot project which is set up in UK. That is also claimed to be the cheapest source of balancing. Now, this is from the principal point of view, but what is required in India if you want to go in for a huge amount of renewables is ancillary services market. You have ancillary service which is limited presently, taken out by the CRC, which talks only about unrequisitioned capacity from interstate generating stations. Many times there's zero unrequisitioned capacity, and therefore you need to have something which is permanent. And therefore I just thought I'll show you a few slides on necessity of ancillary services. There are depending on the response times, whether it is in seconds or minutes or in half an hour, this is the type of ancillary services. So just to tell you this intermittency of wind on a particular day in Tamil Nadu, this is on 10th May 2012, and see how it changes the next day. Similarly for solar, this is the normal on a non-cloudy day for Gujarat, and see how it changes when there are clouds. This is a Charanka solar park in Gujarat, and then yet another day which is one of these days in the same month. And you have different type of ancillary services which is practiced around the world. I won't get into details. I think we leave more time for discussions. But that's all. I thought I'll just give a brief background. Thank you.
Thank you.